So I can't actually get my gallery to work. The images won't load properly for me, but I'm assuming that's a bug. That happened when I went to my asset manager, and in my very first take of the gallery video, I actually deleted my background's asset ID over here, so I could redo it in the video, but I think that messed things up. So I tried everything. I tried renaming it, I tried deleting it, and closing the engine, restarting my computer, bringing it back in, and it's still nothing works. So instead what I'm going to do is go to my game instance, and by the way, if this problem doesn't happen to you, then I'm good for you, but if it does, then hopefully this helps slightly. It's not a perfect solution, but it's better than nothing. We're going to do, in our create widgets or whatever, in our event init, so when the game starts, we're going to tell it to async load primary asset list. So this is just going to reload all the assets, or it's going to reload, yeah. And the list is going to be our get asset ID list, and the list is going to be our backgrounds. I renamed it to backgrounds. Like that, and if we were to compile, save, and play now, it should show up. It doesn't show up in the right order, mind you. If we were to look at our backgrounds and press play, go to our gallery, you'll see here that bedroom or dorm room 2 is up here, while dorm room 3 is down here, which is strange, but I mean it works. So at least they show up. It's better than nothing. Hopefully you don't have this issue, but I do, so that's a minor fix. Anyways, moving on. We're actually gonna have to use another plugin for our save system, and we actually don't have to use it, but it's a good thing to use. It makes things a lot easier for us, basically. We could just go into C++ and type in the functions we need for our save system, but it'd be easier if we just use this plugin that already has the functions. It is the Victory plugin by Rama, R-A-M-A. It comes with 120 custom blueprint nodes for you, but we are only going to use 2 or 3 of them. The reason, or those functions are the get all saves, get save game object, get all save slot file names. For some reason, Unreal doesn't actually let you do this. It lets you get save directory. This is in blueprints by default. For some reason, you can get the directory, but you can't actually do anything with this directory. You can't find all the files inside of it or anything like that. So we have to use this get save object, get all save slot file names in the plugin to do this. Alternatively, what we could do is go to our persistent data and add a new array of save names in there. And what we would do is when we save our game, we would also add it to the array in our persistent data. And when we delete the save, we would also remove it from the array. However, if we were to copy and paste our saves from another computer, for example, into our saves folder, it wouldn't show up that way because our persistent data was never told that that save name is a, well, save name. You know, you could also just tell them to copy and paste the persistent data save as well, but then that would overwrite all the previous saves, and that would be not great. It wouldn't overwrite the saves. The saves would still be there. It would overwrite the save names in our persistent data. So we would lose all of the names that way. So instead, what we're going to do is use this plugin to get all of our save game object get all save slot file names. The other function we're going to need is, well, we don't need, this is purely cosmetic, but typically games will tell you what time you saved your game at, like right there, Saturday, September 1st at 2018 at 12:35. And by default, Unreal doesn't actually let you do this. If we go to, say, date time, we can do math with our date and time, and we can get our text as date and time. Actually, I think this is, yeah, we can get a date and time from text. However, we can't actually get our system's date and time. But with the blueprint, or with the plugin, we can get our system real world get current system OS time. And we can get the, actually this includes the day, month, and year. So yeah, we can get that from the plugin. So yeah, just letting you know that in the next video we are going to be using the Victory plugin. You can't find it on the marketplace, actually. You have to download it from the GitHub page or from the forum post Rama did for this plugin has links to the GitHub page, which I will put in the description. Moving on, in this video we're actually going to be working on our new game, because basically right now it's completely broken. If we were to hit play right now, for example, start, and there's Fury, and we break the pot, and we go to our Codex, we go to our history, we have history, and then we go to our Codex, and all this stuff pops up. If we were to go to our menu, start a new game, our history is still what it used to be, and our Codex still shows up as the old Codex stuff. And Yuri's still introduced over here, even though when we started a new game at first, she was not introduced. So we have to deal with all that stuff before we actually work on saving and loading our game, because when we save and load our game, we're actually going to be using, we're basically going to be doing the same thing as the new game when we load our game, except we're going to be passing in a save game instead, and loading our variables from there instead of getting our default variables. So everything that would be affected by our save game or loading our game is going to need three functions. It's going to need the new game function, the save game function, which is going to get a save game object passed into it to, save our data into it, and it's going to need a load game function, which will take in a save game and load our variables from it. So let's create a new blueprints and blueprint class. This is going to be a save game. I'm just going to call it VN save game, and we're going to make a new blueprints interface. And if you remember, the interface is just what we've been working on with our participants. If we were to go to our game instance, for example, it inherits from a dialogue participant interface. A interface is just something that says, hey, these are a bunch of functions that this class is going to get. So our game instance is definitely going to need this interface. Would you like to, oh, sorry, no, cancel. We're going to hit the add button for VN save interface. Let's compile and save this, and let's actually add some functions into here. You'll notice that we still have this blueprint graph, but we can't actually edit it for some reason. I'm not sure why they had this take up so much space when we can't actually do anything in here, but it's whatever. Our first function is going to be the new game. Let's call this on new game. We're not going to take in any variables. We need to add a new function. This is on save game, and we're going to take in a VN save game. And another one for on load game. The reason I'm using an interface, by the way, even though we really don't need to, is because I don't want to have to retype out all these functions in all my classes, because there are quite a few of them that needs this interface. So back in our game instance, if we were to compile, and it doesn't show up in our interfaces over here, only the dialog callback shows up because it doesn't return anything. So Unreal is like, alright, well, you don't return anything, therefore it must be a event. So what we can do instead is just say on new game, event on new game. Choose the add event one, not the call function or class VN save interface on whatever. Choose this is the only one that allows us to override the function. So we'll do that. And when we do our new game, we need to get our triggered flags and just tell it to clear itself. So our flags is now empty. We should also probably set our player name, set our player name to be none or question marks or whatever. I'm going to do question marks, it doesn't really matter. And we also have to actually call this. So back in our widgets for our menu, when we hit start, we have to get our game instance. And tell it to cause a new game. And you'll notice that this pin is in yellow because it's calling an interface function. So those just pop up as yellow. Don't worry about it being not in blue. So I've hit play and start. We have our codex. Go to our codex. It shows up there. And we go to our menu and we start again. Our codex still shows up properly, or it still shows up as with the last information, and that's because when we clear our triggered flags, we never actually told the codex to sort of update the buttons to be like, hey, the information has changed. So let's also do that when we do our event on new game. We have to get our menus. Or actually, we have a reference to our Codex widget. We have to get all of the children, so get the button scroll box, count, and then get our scroll box, get child at the index, and what we're going to do is tell it to let's see, update codex details. That should work. So back in our over here, sorry, cast to update codex details. Let's hit play, start, and our pot can now be viewed. If we go to our codex, there it is. If we go back to our menu, start, and go to our codex, our pot is no longer there. Great. Alright, so that deals with the codex. However, our history is still messed up. So let's deal with that now. Go to our history and make sure this inherits from the interface. This is VN save interface. Right click, event on new game. Sorry, compile first, otherwise it doesn't show up. And what we're going to do on the new game is actually, okay. What we could do is keep all of our entries in here, in our scroll box, and sort of update them based on, update our history, or sorry, not history, our events based on, no, history, based on the count of where it was before we had a new game. But that would be a lot more math than I want to do right now, so instead what we're going to do is just say get scroll box, clears the children. It just removes all the children from the panel. Because right now if we were to just tell them all to be empty text, what would happen is, let's say we have 350 text in our history. What would happen is when we hit new game, and let's say we had a maximum of 500, we would be able to go up to 150 lines. And then when we have 150 lines, what would happen is it would start, actually update entry, based on get child at 0, and then it pushes it to the end. If our children count is less than our, yeah, okay, so this is when we check to see if we have to create a new widget or not. It's based on if our children count of our scroll box is less than our max history length, instead of instead of based on our children's that are available to be updated. And so what would happen is after that 150 lines, we would start telling it to update our entries instead. So we would only have a maximum of 150 lines in our history instead of the 500 like we're supposed to, until we eventually loop back through all of the empty ones and we start being able to add new entries again, which is not what we want. So that's why we're just going to clear the children instead of doing something that's more complicated than we need to at the moment. We'll probably change that in the next video when we load our game and we load our history, but for now, we just do this. So back in our game instance, when we do our event on new game, we're also going to have to tell our history widget. So get our history to do on new game. We can actually just, nope, never mind. We don't have any other calls here, so we can just have to do it over here at the end of it. Now let's test that out. Press play, start, and we go to our history. All of our debug can now be viewed in the Codex. Hold on, that's not right. If we hit play, start, the first line is no longer being added to our history for some reason. What's going on here? Scroll box is empty. Add entry. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay, so what's happening right now is when we go to our menu and we say start, we click on the start. The dialogue starts, and when the dialogue starts, it starts the dialogue, and when it starts the dialogue, it also updates the text. And this is when we add it to our history. But then after we start our dialogue here, we update our button visibility, whatever, and then we do our on new game. And in our on new game, in our game instance, we are clearing the children in our history, which means that very first line went away, despite the fact that we just started the game. So what we need to do is in our menu on the on-click start, we have to call the on new game first before we do the start dialogue. There we go, like this. So let's try compiling and saving now, and if we hit start, go to our history, and there it is. Our history shows up properly now. Anyways, so we do some stuff, go to our, there's our history right there. Go to our menu, start a new game, go to our history, and it's back to just being this line. However, Yuri is introduced because our participants are never told to reset their variables, so now we have to deal with that. Okay, let's go to our dialogue. I'm going to make our dialogue a it doesn't actually have any variables that needs to be affected, but it does hold our backgrounds, which needs to be changed when we save it, when we load our game. So I'm going to make this also a VN save interface, and this interface is just going to call the interface on our children as well. So back in our participants, we need to make this a VN save interface as well. So VN save interface, compile and save these. Anyways, on the dialogues new game, we're just going to go through each of our children, or each of our characters, and tells them to do new game. We also have to, in our game instance, we have to add the dialogue widget to the stuff we're calling new game on. But in our participants, we're actually not going to do anything in our base participant class because it doesn't really propagate properly to our children for some reason. So instead, I'm just going to go to our Yuri and say on event new game, we're going to set our introduced back to being false. We're just going to set our variables back to default basically on our new game. Ana doesn't actually have any variables that need to be changed ever. They don't actually ever change, so we're just going to keep them as is. And as for the character's position on screen, that should be dealt with in our test dialog over here in the very beginning, when we tell them to go to their initial positions and stuff like that. But in the save game and load game, we're gonna have to deal with doing that, but for now, this should be fine. So participant doesn't get anything, but our game instance calls it on our dialog, which calls it on our characters. Alright, let's see if this works. Compile, save, and play. Start until Yuri's introduced. Go back to our menu, start again, and Yuri is not introduced. However, if we were to go to our Codex right now, go to our Codex, there's Yuri, go to our menu, start again, and then go back to our Codex, and Yuri doesn't show up. That's interesting. I honestly thought that there would be another bug there we'd have to take care of, because what I thought would happen is that when we start a new game, Yuri would still be introduced at this point when we tell our Codex buttons to update themselves, because we set our characters to be doing their new game before we do our Codex. So with Yuri still introduced, it would say like what is it? A girl with purple hair. But apparently that's fine. That's weird. I'm actually not sure why that's happening, so because I'm not sure, I'm just gonna be paranoid about it and do this anyways. I'm gonna make this happen first before we update our Codex. So break links here. And before we update our Codex, we're gonna do the new game on our history and characters. Just because I have no idea why that's working properly, which is, you know, usually a good thing, but it's really freaking me out. So what else do we have to take care of? Characters, Codex, menu, start, and actually I think that might be it for our new game. Let's see, there is the Codex, there's dialogue options, which is fine, characters, gallery, doesn't affect it. Yeah, I think that's actually going to do it for our new game. And we'll take care of saving and loading our game in the next video, because I still can't find any royalty-free, free-to-download music files in WAV format. Everything is in MP3.